All right, the draft is approaching. We are actually a month away from the NFL draft. I wanted to get into the uncertainties of CJ Stroud. It is Landry Locker, Locker Room. You can also see me / hear me on SNL Monday through Friday at 4 o'clock. But CJ Stroud, there's a lot of uncertainty about CJ Stroud heading into year 3. And naturally, when you talk about a quarterback, there's always like a tendency to ride and die for your guy, defend your guy. And I get that. And I think CJ Stroud, I think it goes without saying that last year CJ Stroud did not have favorable surroundings. He had one of the worst offensive lines in the league. He had wide receivers getting hurt. He had a system that obviously wasn't something that they were comfortable running.
Damn it, Bobby.
A regression by Bobby Slowick, and he didn't really the stuff he could control. He didn't handle as well as CJ Stroud. The expectations that he had set up. This was CJ Stroud at the end of the season talking about looking back on year 2 and what he learned from it. And we'll get into the many uncertainties. We'll discuss them each here in the locker room. Shout out to everyone in the chat. We're a month away from the draft. Let's hear what CJ Stroud had as we discuss the uncertainties of the most important man in the Texans organization.
I learned, that you can't get comfortable. There's one thing in this league, being comfortable will get you got. And, I think for me, I wouldn't say that I was comfortable, but I definitely had a feeling like I knew I was going to do well. And even that's dangerous, So, and I would say, man, it's cliche, but you really can control what you can control. Control the controllables. If you can't control it, you can't let it stress you. As best as to your ability. It's either said than done. So I would say those two of the main things I learned was, don't get comfortable and stay hungry and, control the controllables.
All right, control the controllables. And look, if that's something that helps CJ Stroud, we heard him talk about he wasn't having fun early on, that'll be good. He's not a finished product. He's got some stuff that needs to be controlled that's not what he can control. But the reality is, at the quarterback position, even if you control what you can control, if your surroundings suck, then things aren't going to go your way. And it's going to be damn near impossible to not get frustrated and not be able to get the job done. And these are the many uncertainties of CJ Stroud heading into year 3. And these are 3 of the most important things that you need when you're talking about a quarterback, but these are things we have no idea about. Like if I gave each and every person in this chat, let's say I gave you a piece of paper, or we could just stay up to date and you can type it on your phone. The 3 most important things for a quarterback to succeed. Coaching is obvious, but I think the 3 biggest uncertainties that we're about to discuss would be near the top of the list. Number 1, who is blocking for CJ Stroud? Kind of important. We've seen the Texans add an array of guys. We've seen them add body after body after body on the offensive line. We don't know if any of these guys are good. We know it's a lot of guys. We know these aren't long-term fixes. But you've added an overwhelming amount of guys to block for CJ Stroud. We don't know what the offensive line is going to look like. There might be 5 position battles for all we know. You would think Cam Robinson's going to start at one of the tackles, but outside of that, all bets are off. Perfect world, Blake Fisher is an unquestioned starter. That's a perfect world, but we don't know who is blocking for him, which is kind of important. We also don't know who he's throwing to. We have no idea who CJ Stroud is throwing to. We know he has Nico Collins. We know he has Dalton Schultz, Christian Kirk. How reliable is he going to be? And then the back end of the receiver room, we don't know. So we don't know who's blocking for him. We don't know who he's throwing to, and we don't know if those guys that he's throwing to are going to be capable of performing up to the requirements for this team to be a good football team. Then the next question is, and this might be just as important. We know that Bobby Slowick's gone.
Damn it, Bobby.
What system is even running? What system is CJ Stroud even running? Is the other question that needs to be asked. Is it going to be a system that fits his skill set? They've described it as Nick Caley described it as a hybrid. Okay, a hybrid of New England and a hybrid of the Rams. Is that good for CJ Stroud? Does that fit what CJ Stroud does? It's definitely new. So we can say that it might fit the skills. We can say that it might not. We haven't seen it. So it goes back to even more uncertainty with CJ Stroud. And I'm bringing this up because I think that CJ Stroud is very, very capable of controlling, or at least learning to be able to control what he can control. But at the quarterback position, that's not enough. In a lot of in a lot of areas and in a lot of positions, that is enough. Control what you can control. Worry about what you want to worry about. But if you're going out there on Sundays and everything that you can control, from your diet to your mindset to your rest to your preparation, everything is perfect, but the guys in front of you aren't blocking, the guys who you're throwing to aren't getting open, and the system sucks, it really doesn't matter. And those are three uncertainties with CJ Stroud that we have no idea about. Now, we'll talk about the reason for optimism and the reason for pessimism, but those are three things. Doyle Keister says Gray Zabel. Okay, what about it? what do you want to talk about there? You want to go O-line, I'm assuming, in the first round? Okay. I don't know much about him. I've heard things I don't know. You think he's the guy that can hold it down? Cool. I didn't watch much North Dakota State, although I did watch Trey Lance's brother catch a few passes. So that's who you would like them. Do you think Gray Zabel makes someone better online? Who knows? Be interesting to see how that whole thing goes. But we don't know about the O-line, the reason for optimism with the offensive line. They at least changed, guys. Change for the sake of change. Is that where we're at? I mean, the interior, more experience. We don't know about Blake Fisher. I guess change for the sake of change would be where it was. And maybe there's a better scheme. I don't know how you can feel good about this offensive line. Now, does that mean it's going to be terrible? No. I think all these things are connected. But from an offensive line perspective, it's very hard for me to really be able to sell anyone on this offensive line. I do like the competition. And it was a fascinating thing to see last year that there was no competition. I thought that was a little bit wild that they didn't have that. But as far as selling anyone on the offensive line, I'm not going to sell anyone on Trent Brown. I don't know, like Trent Brown, and when I say all this, I don't know that they could have done much more, because free agency is not necessarily the way to handle the offensive line. Like Trent Brown, Tomlinson, these were big signings a few years ago. This is the third teams they've been on since they were among the highest paid at their position in free agency. I think it's kind of symbolic of the dangers of trying to build an offensive line through free agency. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when, wasn't that long ago, when I'm on the air and former Texan offensive lineman Wade Smith is saying, we need to get Trent Brown. I think he would be awesome. He goes to the Raiders, doesn't work out, ends up getting traded right back to the Patriots. He goes to the Patriots, and he ends up with the Bengals. Tomlinson was a Pro Bowler next to Trent Williams. Then he went to the Jets. Jets fans absolutely hate him, although they hate everybody. And then he goes to the Seahawks, and they don't really like him either. So I think what the Texans did was fine. And the offensive line coach is another mystery. We don't know if Popovich is going to be a good offensive line coach or not. I like Popovich. From everything I've heard, from what people in New England have said to me and publicly, I'm intrigued by what Popovich can do and what he will do. But as far as just like reason for optimism, it's different. It's different. You have a different coach, you have different guys, and you have competition. You did not have competition last year. Laremy Tunsil was earned his job. Kenan Green was handed his job. Juice Scruggs was thrown at center, handed his job. Shaq Mason, despite being out of shape, handed his job. Titus Howard, despite being out of shape, handed his job. Competition this year. So I guess that's the sales pitch. But am I going to sit here and say that this is going to be a good offensive line? No. But it's different. There's a different coach, and there's competition. So as far as the who's blocking for him, unfinished at this point. We don't know what they'll do in the draft, but it's at least different. That's the glass half full POV there. Swarm in the super chat. You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
Almighty, whatever the heck you're trying to say there. We need Wade Smith in the locker room. Wade's busy, man. Wade is a busy guy. He would come on. I still text with Wade every once in a while. I texted him like last week. Dude, he's got like 3 girls and they're all like all world volleyball players. He's like he's like the LeVar Ball of volleyball. What Smitty is. But yeah, Smitty's my boy. I can get him on. We're gonna have John Harris on SNL. We're gonna have a draft-a-thon in the month of April. So it's going to be a couple hours of John Harris just talking full draft. I think it's going to be the best draft product that you will be able to consume digitally. And it's going to be courtesy of myself, Cody Stoots, Locker Room, his channel, and of course SNL, which you should subscribe to on all podcast platforms and right here. Lucas says we have to trust Caserio. No, we don't. No, we don't. Why? And what has he done to earn it? And this is going to be my first question to Nick Caserio when he speaks at the draft. Do you feel like you have a problem when it comes to evaluating offensive linemen? You've given extensions to guys that you've had to immediately get rid of. You've drafted guys that aren't any confidence. If you trust Nick Caserio about offensive line play, then that's crazy. That's crazy. I'm not sitting here saying that Nick Caserio is on like some sort of hot seat or something like that. I'm not sitting here saying that Nick Caserio is not a good GM. I like D'Amico and Caserio's relationship. There might be some rocky waters at times. I want these guys to ride it out. I want them to ride it out. But if you trust Nick Caserio when it comes to offensive line, then you would have trusted him no matter what. Because the job that he's done, and really, quite frankly, the job D'Amico's done, evaluating, deciding who plays, picking who you pay, picking who you draft, it's been terrible. And fortunately, sports are fluid, so it can kind of change. But if you trust Nick Caserio with the offensive line, then he can do no wrong in your eyes. Exactly. His offensive line track record's terrible. You can't trust that. So it can change. They're at least trying to change it with all the previously mentioned changes that they've had. But I don't think you have to trust Caserio at all when it comes to this offensive line. I think that is something that you should probably have a healthy amount of skepticism about. It's not good. It's not going to be good until we see what exactly they're going to do on the offensive line. The next question, who is he throwing to? He being CJ Stroud. Now, I think when we approach this, when it comes to who CJ Stroud is throwing to, I think the thing here is when I think about this, I don't think about the start of last year where you had Diggs and Tank Dell, because both of those guys got hurt. And at the end of the season, you knew Tank wasn't playing this year, and you knew that Diggs most likely wasn't going to be back. So it would be kind of silly to compare what CJ Stroud is going to throw to this year to then. I do think that the back end has been helped, and I think Christian Kirk will be interesting. Now, where it's really going to get real and where this conversation is really going to intensify, and I'm hesitant to just completely break this thing down, because I think there's a chance that they draft a wide receiver, and there's also a chance that they sign one on the secondary market once stuff kind of clears up and maybe more opportunities present themselves for them to sign guys. But the scary thing about this is, let's say that the draft goes and they don't have another receiver. And then let's say the secondary market isn't that great, and you bring in, I don't know, a mid-tier free agent to add to the receiver room, and maybe you draft a guy late, but you can't really expect him to contribute immediately. That's where this gets kind of scary, because I think this is just as important as the offensive line, if not more. I think guys getting open is important. You always have these discussions, and it's, well, he was on his back. Well, he was on his back, but was the guy getting open? I think it's kind of connected. So I think that is something to keep an eye on. Who is he throwing to? As far as the optimism there, Christian Kirk, probably one of the better options that you could have had realistically. I don't think you were getting any of these big names that ended up going to the teams of their choices. And he's kind of a guy who can do work in the slot. And I think that this offense, if it is a hybrid of New England and the Rams, I think there's a chance, and we've talked about this, I think there's a chance that this ends up being the type of offense that uses slots, and not just one, but multiple slot guys. So that's the optimistic POV of the receivers. Now, what can you get in the draft? We've heard all the names. And Golden's pro day is tomorrow. I don't know how much Golden really has to do at this point. It feels like Golden is an unquestioned first-round pick at this point. I saw him mocked to 12 earlier today. And then Ibuka, we'll see what he runs the 40 in 2 days at Ohio State's pro day. I don't know if y'all saw this, but this was another very polarizing moment today. And this is a possible like day 3 type of guy, but RG3 was really passionate about this. Xavier Restrepo. So his 40 time wasn't great. And it looks really awkward when you watch it here. Not the best 40. People have talked about this being 4.8. Would have been the slowest at the combine by a 1/10 of a second for a receiver. Saw him kind of get open at Miami. There's always the polarizing pro day. And this was one of the ones. And I thought they would like Restrepo. They still might. Hell, might be able to get him at a bargain at this point with how that went. But Restrepo is a guy that the Texans are I thought they would be intrigued by, but that was a bad 40. I mean, when you're at one of the smaller guys and you're a 1/10 of a second slowest 40 time, that's a tough sell, to say the very least. And I know 40 time isn't everything, but that's kind of bad. That's kind of bad. 0.2 of a second slower than Wes Welker is the one that is getting the most attention. Then what system is CJ Stroud running? There's multiple layers to that. And I think that's a big deal. It's not necessarily that he has to learn a new system. I know a lot of people, whenever you're talking about changing a system, it's like, well, now you're making the guy learn, X amount of systems in X amount of years. And I think sometimes it can get out of control. Like, I think Alex Smith learned like 4 systems his 4 years in the league. Not ideally what you want to do, but we see it all the time. We see guys learn new systems. We see them come into the league and learn the system. We see them kind of have success. We saw CJ Stroud. He learned Bobby Slowick's system, and he had a historic rookie year. The next year, Jaden Daniels did the same thing. Like we see offensive systems change all the time. Shane Steichen left, in came Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore did a really good job. So this happens. But is it going to fit CJ Stroud's skills? And are they going to be able to maximize his skills? And is it going to be able to overcome any sort of personnel things? That's what the real question is when it comes to the Texans. And the other thing is this. Could the defense be the help? Could the Texans build such a good defense that maybe, how do you say this? The pressure on the offense is not as high? Could they possibly do that? Could the Texans just be putting together such a good defense that CJ Stroud is asked to do less? Now, if you're going to do that, you're probably going to have to run the rock a little bit. He's going to have to take advantage of like certain situational opportunities. We saw that, and we've seen him do that throughout his career. Like a lot of the time, whenever you need a big play, even if CJ needs to save all butts, a lot of times CJ has been able to do that. Is that the kind of situation that you put CJ Stroud in? I think there's a 0% chance with all of these questions. The Texans are not going to be like some sort of air raid, try to go score 35 points type of team. Now, with the defensive coach, do they maybe shift in a direction where they're trying to play to the skills of their football team, which just so happens to be what D'Amico likes most, which is defense? Could they get to that point where that's what the Texans are trying to do? I think that's something to kind of keep a close eye on. If the personnel is bad, we've heard, what was the term that we heard Kaylee say, and what was the term that we heard D'Amico say? Square peg, round hole. In other words, we're not going to ask a limited offense to go out there and just air it out. We're not going to throw the ball 45 times and try to make CJ Stroud do something based on personnel. So I wonder if maybe the Texans are going to shift in a way to where they play offense to kind of cater to their defense. That can work. Depends how good your defense is. But there are going to be times where you're going to have to, where the offense is going to have to be called upon. And when the draft happens in a month, we'll get a more clear picture of this. And we'll see how this whole thing works. I did find this interesting, and we'll get into some of the rookies in a second. But those are just the uncertainties of CJ Stroud. Some he can control, some he can't. But I thought it would be interesting to revisit this with all the changes that were made on the staff and on the offensive line. I thought it was interesting when CJ Stroud said this. And let's just kind of revisit his question about uncomfortable conversations that needed to be had before any changes had been made. Let's revisit what CJ Stroud had to say about that.
Not just this week, it's overtime, and most of them are individual, and some of them are as a collective. And for me, it's my job to be honest and my job to be transparent, and that's what I feel like I'll do, throughout this time, and with free agency and draft and everything. If my opinion is asked, I'm gonna give it like it or not. So, yeah, and I think I would like that same type of honesty back to myself, because with that comes clarity and it comes just clear communication and transparency. So, yeah, it'll be over time, but I definitely think today was the start of that, and we'll continue to have conversations, and and that's it's a healthy thing. It's not a bad thing. It's really healthy to have those type of conversations, and even if they turn into things where it's confrontation or whatever, that's necessary. We're all men in here mostly, and you figure it out, and we all got love for one another. You spend years with guys, or you spend a whole year with somebody, you'll learn to like them and learn to have things to like about them. So yeah.
All right, so there you go. And that's they've had those conversations. Obviously, they decided bye Bobby Slowick. They decided bye Laramie Tunsil.
Damn it, Bobby.
They decided bye Kenyon Green. They decided bye Shaq Mason. They decided hello Nick Caley. They decided hello Cole Popovich. So they had those conversations. They decided to make the decisions. The other thing is that I think is interesting is, and this goes back to the defense. Ask Joe Burrow if a defense can hold you back. I guess ask Joe Burrow if a defense can hold you back. And for a long time, it was the O-line. But Joe Burrow had an MVP caliber season this year, and no one even looked at him, and they really weren't a threat. They were one of those teams, oh, will they get hot? Can they win 6 in a row? But they really weren't a threat because of their defense. And that's going to be a large focal point for them. Like, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks. We've seen Brady win Super Bowls leaning on his defense early in his career. We've seen the Eagles, although they had a pretty good offense too, but their defense kind of took them home this year, and it went from last to first. So if you can increase the potential margin for error and the expectation with the offense with an elite defense, then that can help the quarterback too. Because I agree that wide receiver, offensive line is definitely the two biggest needs, but you can also help your quarterback with defense. It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans digital content. SNL tomorrow at 4. We're going to ask this question. And Cody Stoots is going to bring a six-pack of possibilities. And I thought it was a little bit shocking today, while talking with Cody Stoots about the draft, that when we started talking about 25 and the possibilities of what the Texans could take, he kind of snapped out of it a little bit. But Cody seemed a little bit more open to maybe going defense at 25 more than he originally has been throughout the process. And look, it's a fluid process. We're starting to really dive into these receivers and see what the possibilities are at 25. We see all these bodies on the offensive line. Cody kind of snapped into and started becoming a little bit more open to perhaps taking a defensive player at 25. And my question would be this: what would your reaction be, chat, if the Houston Texans, with the 25th overall pick in the NFL draft, selected a defensive player? What would your reaction be? Let's say Campbell from Alabama. Let's say Campbell falls. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with the Texans taking a linebacker at 25? The best linebacker in the draft, by far, Jahad Campbell, Alabama guy like D'Amico, Man, he can cover. Probably get after the quarterback too. Would you be okay with that? Would you be okay if a defensive lineman, D'Amico Ryans, decides to take a defensive lineman at 25 overall? Part of me says, wouldn't really love it. But the other part of me says, and this is kind of the counter to the Caserio trust, the other part of me says, I trust them when it comes to defensive players. If the Texans, and look, the draft is the draft. J.J. Watt got booed. We all got opinions. We see it play out and we enjoy it. The unpredictability of it is what makes this so fun. But if they take a defensive guy, I automatically feel like he's going to be an effing player. I don't feel that way with the receivers that we're discussing right now. I don't feel that way with the possibilities at offensive line. If they draft a defensive player at 25, I trust them. I also think it's possible this is going to be an elite defense. I'm way more open to this than I was before. I'm kind of like Cody. Now, what does that mean for the offense? Your guess is as good as mine. But I think there's a good chance whether they draft someone at 25 or not, this is going to be one of the best defenses in the league. I'll be damn near shocked if it's not. That would be one of the more shocking things. Like for all this talk about offense, this is going to be a really, really good defense. And I trust them there. Don't trust them when it comes to offense. We're a month away from this mofo. I don't know whether it's going to go fast or slow. Who knows? We got some March Madness. Got a little baseball. Remember when Easterby was like, Astros playing baseball, Rockets in the playoffs. Trying to pander. This is going to be this is going to be a fun month countdown. There's a hell of a lot of possibilities. I'm team trade back. If you want to trade back and then take a defensive guy, go ahead. B-Spin's asking for a mock draft on the Pro Football Network. Never done it, man. You could be sending me to like an old school porn site with like all kinds of pop-ups and stuff. Let's see. 2025 mock draft simulator. Yeah, this looks pretty simple. So select your teams to mock draft. I'll pull this up. So we'll go 7 rounds. We're not trading though. Got the Texans. All right, we've already started. Here we go. I'll pull this up. No unplanned mock draft. Let's get this up. All right. So we're on the clock. We got, do we want to trade back? Look at this. We can trade pick 25. This is way better than anything I've seen. Okay, so right off the top, we get the opportunity. Now, let's kind of see how this team has played out. I don't even know how to pull up the orders. We'll hide this real quick. And let's see how this draft went. So Carter, Campbell, it's going weird ass order, but the quarterbacks will be gone. So it plays out like what happens at the top doesn't matter. So we could draft Campbell. The Campbell scenario is there. We could draft Ibuka. The scenario is there. We don't know what he ran in the 40 yet. We don't have a time machine. We'll know that this week. Omarion Hampton, who I'm a big fan of, we can get. But we also have the trade offer where we can get 49, 81. Damn, we can get a second next year. We can have 3 seconds next year. And that's not fun for the mock right now, but the idea of Nick Caserio and D'Amico having 3 seconds next year, I think we got to trade. I think we got to take this trade. So let's do the trade back. Let's accept this deal. Now we're on the clock. We're waiting for 49. All right, we've traded enough. Let's pick something. We'll reject that. Man, they offer a lot of crap here. All right, so we got Xavier Watts. Jackson Dart's still there. The slide of Jackson Dart. He is Will Levis this year. Not really a lot to choose from when you trade back that far, though. So now we're finding ourselves in a rough spot. Do we want to go offense? Do we want to go defense? There's not much to do here. Kind of in no man's land. So this is kind of a tough area. Are we going defense? Nah. This wasn't as fun as I thought. Trade back's not always fun when you go that far. So yeah, that's a good simulator, but that was just a little trade back. I'm not going to do the whole mock. We'll do a mock later. Man, that would kind of suck if you went to 49. There's no running back or anything. And this was the other thing that Stoots brought up today. And this really was music to my ears. If you know me, I've been pushing this for a long time. Seems kind of open to the Omarion Hampton thing too. He seems a little bit more open to drafting another running back. Look, if you're going to be a defensive team, the best compliment for a defensive team is being able to run the pill. Drafting one guard or one tackle is not going to automatically make you run the pill. A good scheme can. I mean, they're taking some big-ass dudes right now. What if they just want to become a smash-mouth, run, old-school, situational passing team, kind of dissect it and play up to the run? What if they like Hampton? I'm cool with Hampton. Yeah, I might have traded back too far, but next year when we have those 3 seconds, it'll be cool. Next year, it'll be cool. It's a hell of a lot of mock drafting, man. Y'all are crazy with that. Some people trade like 400 times. We having a draft party this year? Yes, we are. We'll figure out where. We're actually trying to work on the venue. So here's how we do it. We're going to stream day 1 and day 2. Be a mega stream. God, it's going to be a mega stream. And then we're going to have a party on Saturday to just kind of consume and enjoy day 3. It's what we did last year. Last year, I think like 50 people showed up. It was pretty cool. And that was before we started SNL. We were doing our own digital thing. And that was before we started the SNL cast. So we're expecting some good opportunity there. So day 3, if you're a member of this community, be sure to mark your calendar. Usually it's between. I really don't want to go downtown, but like it's between like the Heights and kind of like the Gessner area. It just depends. But yeah, everyone pull up. We'll figure that out. And we'll get that going. That'll be day 3. Pro days this week. We got some pro days. The golden debate is going to continue. Now, I don't know what he's going to do. I damn sure wouldn't run my 40 if I was him. I think that Matthew Golden can kind of stand on what he did, stand on that business of what he did in the 40. But he's going to have his pro day. Maybe they'll be out there and they'll be checking out Banks. Maybe they'll be checking out Jaden Blue as like a late option. Hell, there's 5 offensive linemen to look at. So we'll have that tomorrow. Ohio State Pro Day. is going to be in 2 days. What will Ibuka run? That's going to be, I mean, that's one of the more anticipated 40s, I would say, of this draft season. We didn't see it at the combine. If he doesn't run a good 40, does that scare the Texans? Does that scare other teams? Could this be a draft like we saw 7 drafted in the first round, 7 wide receivers last year? Could we see a couple? It's possible. What's he going to run? You know they're going to like him. But how closely are they going to be watching that 40? That's something to keep an eye on too. Hopefully he doesn't have the internet going nuts like homeboy did. On the mock draft, Beast Ben says you should put it on normal speed, and almost 100% of the time the order is solid, like Ward 1 or Carter. Okay, so it's the fast speed that does it. I'll keep that in mind. We'll do some mock drafts. We got a month. I'm just wondering what the quarterback's doing right now. What is CJ Stroud up to? I know he's obviously laying a little bit lower than he was last year. Now, some would say that's a choice. And I'm not saying that he wouldn't have made this decision regardless. But I don't know that it was as much of a choice. I don't know that CJ Stroud was in its high demand as he was last year. So I think you can kind of connect the performance too. Does it matter? Who knows? I wonder how he's picking up the system because CJ knows what the system is. How about that? Nico Collins knows what the system is. That's what's crazy. We have all this uncertainty. You know how when someone like gets something that hadn't come out yet, and you're like jealous of them? Damn, that hadn't even come out yet. How'd you get that? That's what CJ is with the playbook right now. You know he's already got it. He might know it like the back of his hand. Who knows? I haven't heard a damn thing from CJ. Y'all like I don't stalk these dudes out on Instagram or anything. If something like comes across the timeline, that's fine. CJ's not even on social media, is he? He's completely unwinding. CJ might be locked in a room. He might be teaching everyone the system by the time they figure this thing out. Wonder how difficult it is. Because that's the other thing about this hybrid crap. And that's where you really got to find the middle. That's the other thing about this Kaylee thing. This is something nobody's talking about. Because the one good thing about Sean McVay is Sean McVay will dummy stuff up for players. Like Sean McVay will make it easier for you instead of just trying to make you feel stupid. He's gonna simplify it. He's gonna make it easy. Baker Mayfield showed up like on a freaking Monday and played on Sunday or whatever the hell it was. Remember that? Remember when Baker Mayfield showed up like in the middle of the week and then all of a sudden he was starting? He won the game. Remember when CJ Anderson or whoever it was had like that monster season? What was that? Is that 2018? I think. Yeah, I think that was it. He like going to turn the clock back. He'll simplify it for you. They didn't do that in New England. They didn't make it easy for you. As a matter of fact, some of the guys that came out of there tried to make it as difficult as possible. There were a lot of people who played in that system and said, man, it takes a long time to figure out. It's tough. So when you talk about the hybrid and you talk about the good things from this one and the bad things from that one, that's really where it kind of has to meet for CJ and the rest of the players. This thing's got to, I would like it to lean a little bit more Rams whenever it comes to making this simple. And I don't know how hard the scheme was last year. The confusing thing for me was, yeah, it did seem like defensive coordinators knew how to attack Bobby.
Damn it, Bobby.
But it also seemed like these guys just didn't know what the hell they were doing. Which the weird factor comes into the fact that the year before, guys were coming off the street and they knew what they were doing. So that was a little bit confusing too. There's a lot of uncertainty with CJ Stroud. How is he going to handle this system? What is the system going to look like? How do they evaluate him? I mean, because this isn't just like some year where, hey, we'll let him figure it out, and then maybe by the next year, he's eligible for an extension after this year. So he's feeling the heat. He's getting one. But what if this system isn't right for him? I've heard some people say, well, CJ Stroud, he's a guy that you want to throw the ball deep with, and that's what CJ Stroud is best at. He likes to extend, like you got to extend the field with him. I don't necessarily know if that's a must. I'm intrigued to see what he does. Cam Ward, by the way, had his pro day today. As we kind of take our eyes off our own paper, he's basically calling Tennessee out and saying, draft my ass. Like, enough is enough. Y'all have seen enough. Y'all know why I'm here. Y'all know what I'm about. Draft me. That's what he said. I think I showed him enough was what he said. I think that's a done deal. So the quarterbacks in the division next year, or next season, I should say. It's going to be CJ. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence coming back from the shoulder surgery. It's going to be Daniel Jones. And it's going to be Cam Ward. Still got to think CJ's the best there, even though we haven't seen him in this system. Now, here's the thing, and this is where the news gets better. Cam Ward's going to have to be learning a new system. Daniel Jones is pretty much going to have to be learning a new system. Trevor Lawrence is going to have to be learning a new system. I don't think that's the problem. So we can throw that excuse out the window with CJ Stroud with all the uncertainties. Now, does the system fit his abilities? Who knows? It's going to be the first time that he's played in it. We don't know what the hell it is. But as far as he's learning a new system, every other quarterback in the division is too. Every other starter, which is fine. And Indianapolis is saying that it's going to be like some sort of competition. Come on. Competition.
This is fake. This fake.
It's a fake?
Yeah, that's Photoshop. That's fake. On my mama, that's fake. On my heart, on my life, my little brother grave, I could die right now. That's fake.
Yeah, that's not going to be a competition. You don't give Daniel Jones. It's kind of like the same thing that we're talking about with Cam Robinson. You don't give a guy 8 figures to come in and be a backup tackle. So whether it plays out that way or not, like when they brought in Cam Robinson, they decided, okay, this guy's going to be a starting tackle, left tackle. When the Colts brought in Daniel Jones, this would be a starter. You got to kind of read between the lines of what McAfee says. And if McAfee's feeling comfortable enough to just completely crap on AR-15, I'm assuming that the Colts franchise is not thrilled with Anthony Richardson. Also, we have eyes, and we've watched Anthony Richardson play, and we can kind of assume that anyone with common sense would not be a big fan of what Anthony Richardson brings to the table. So Daniel Jones is a starter. Let's just be serious about that. So you have a lot of guys in this division, literally all the quarterbacks that are learning new systems. So that's good for CJ. The guys that you're relying on the most for CJ, like if we're talking about who could be the most important guys for CJ Stroud, I think Christian Kirk. If he can return to what he was a couple years ago, I think you feel good there. Man, I want to say Dalton Schultz. It's just been really bad. It was so bad last year that it's hard, really difficult to even entertain the possibility of Dalton Schultz being a solid contributor. I want to believe. I really do. I think he's funny. I kind of like the smartass element of Dalton Schultz. But it's really hard for me with what we saw last year to think that this guy is just going to snap out of it. Like this would, like if we see Dalton Schultz all of a sudden become a top 10, like if he performs like a top 10 tight end, that would be one of the bigger contract year type of situations and flips that we've seen in a long time. If we saw Schultz do that, I think he's capable. We've obviously seen it of being serviceable, but it's hard to imagine Dalton Schultz just being like a solid number 3, number 4 option. And that's the unfortunate thing about this too. And this is something that we've kind of escaped from. It comes up every once in a while, but just think about it this way. Like when we talk about return on investment and stuff, we talk about the offensive line, but there have been teams, and we've seen a lot of teams, and we've seen Kansas City do it for a while. Like we saw Kansas City do it for a while. We saw Baltimore kind of do it to a certain point before they began really investing in wide receivers, where the tight end kind of makes up for any lack of receiver talent, and the tight end elevates their play to where you feel good about what they got going. And it makes your whole offense. We're talking about a team that has wide receiver issues, offensive line issues, and they're paying a tight end really good money. Like Dalton Schultz, basically, I mean, he's one of the, I want to say top 8 highest paid tight ends now, if not higher. And we're not even, like, when we talk about the offense, and by we, I mean me, I'm not separating myself from it. I just did it. Like, I'm saying we need to, like, can Christian Kirk go back to what he was 3 years ago? Can the offensive line block? But let's just pull this up. The highest tight end salaries. The highest paid tight ends in the NFL right now. We'll go to tight end. So right now you have, and let's just do average salary. Dalton Schultz is the 9th highest paid tight end in the league. Top 10. Ahead of him, you have Kelsey, Hawkinson, Kittle, Goddard, Andrews, and Njoku, Kmet, Freiermuth. Dalton Schultz is the 9th highest paid tight end in the league. And when we break down the offense, not even bringing him up. And rightfully so. I don't think it's some sort of mistake. We're not even bringing him up. That says a lot about where he's at. Stover and Brevin Jordan, we'll be excited for them. I'm not going to put that on them to expect them to overcome all that. But it doesn't even get brought up. Think about that. Think about how wild that is. Francisco says Schultz is producing like bottom 10. He's bottom half. Bottom 25. Or not even top 25. And I think Dalton Schultz, the body language factor kind of plays into it too. It's never pretty, even when it's going well. But when it's going bad, I mean, he's a top 5 most hated Texan right now. Dalton Schultz is. You mentioned Dalton Schultz in a post-game show. Whew. A lot of upset people. That's another element, though. And when we go back to that top 25 thing and what the Texans could do at number 25, the tight end gets brought up. I just think there's 2 guys in that situation that you even entertain and could possibly be drafted. After that, day 2, there's some intriguing guys, but there's no like guarantees when you're taking those guys. Although most of those great players that we mentioned earlier, they were day 2 guys. I like Loveland. Loveland's awesome. Joseph asks about Loveland. I like him. Don't know if he's going to be there. Don't know how they feel about Brevin Jordan. As much as we talk about Nick Caley, he likes tight ends. I don't think he thinks that's a position of strength here. But what is? Like, even with the Dalton Schultz thing, and we're talking this out, even with how you feel about Dalton Schultz and the guys behind him, like, what do you feel better about? You feel better about Dalton Schultz, Brevin Jordan, year 2, Cade Stover. And by the way, Brevin coming off the torn ACL. Do you feel better about the tight end group? Or do you feel better? And we'll put Nico to the side here. Or do you feel better about Christian Kirk down in the wide receiver room? Might be a coin toss. Might be a coin toss. So we'll see how the whole thing goes. It's going to be interesting. Farmer Gronk, I don't know if Cade Stover deserves to be Farmer Gronk. I do think he's jacked, though. I think Cade Stover's been getting that Nolan Ryan workout on.
Every day it's just me and a pile of iron.
We'll keep an eye on it. A lot of uncertainties with CJ Stroud, a lot of uncertainties with the draft. Tomorrow, 6 possibilities of guys who could be selected with that 25th pick that can't be a wide receiver and cannot be an offensive lineman. That's going to be at 4:00 on SNL, which is popping. So we'll see how it goes, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got a month left. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Hope everyone had a good weekend. Hopefully your March Madness profits are high and your brackets are still alive. Always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Appreciate you guys for coming through. Always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize, every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up, we number 1. You don't need to try your luck.